Imagine a bustling kitchen. Your mission: deliver a perfect breakfast, 3-minute egg, steaming coffee, buttered toast, all at once. Fail that precise timing, and your entire operation grinds to a halt. Andy Grove's high output management argues that all work, from microchips to criminal justice, is a production process. It involves process, assembly, and test operations. Understanding this universal framework is key to boosting your output. Don't ignore these foundational principles. Apply them everywhere. Maximizing your impact. Welcome back to Audiobook Bites, where we distill powerful insights from transformative business literature. Today, we're diving deep into Andy Grove's high output management, specifically exploring Chapter 3, Managerial Leverage, Maximizing Your Impact. Many managers define their output by what they individually do: the reports they write, the meetings they attend, the decisions they make. But Grove challenges this narrow view. He wisely states, the output of a manager is the output of the organizational units under his supervision or influence. This fundamental distinction is crucial. Your true impact isn't just your personal toil, it's the multiplied effort of everyone your work touches. So how do you amplify that impact? Grove introduces the concept of managerial leverage. Think of it as a force multiplier. Every activity a manager performs has a certain leverage, meaning its ability to multiply the output of their team or organization. As Grove emphasizes, high managerial productivity, I argue, depends largely on choosing to perform tasks that possess high leverage. Imagine waking up tomorrow and every hour you spend on a task could either move a pebble or shift a mountain. High leverage activities are those mountain movers. For instance, clearly defining the annual planning process for an entire company, like Robin, an Intel finance manager, did. By spending focused time upfront to set clear guidelines and responsibilities, she directly influenced the productivity of hundreds of managers for the entire year, eliminating confusion and rework. That's massive leverage. Similarly, investing in training your team isn't just filling an hour, it's equipping multiple individuals to perform better, faster, and more consistently for months or years to come. That ripple effect is a hallmark of high leverage. Here's the catch. Leverage isn't always positive. It can also be negative. But it gets worse. These negative leverage activities often feel productive in the short term. Take meddling, for example, a manager over-supervising a subordinate who is already competent in a task. You might be thinking, but I'm just ensuring quality. However, by dictating every step, you disempower the subordinate, reducing their initiative and long-term capability. The short-term fix creates a long-term dependency. Another source of severe negative leverage is waffling, delaying a critical decision. In a fast-paced environment, indecision stops the flow for everyone waiting, generating frustration and lost momentum that can spread through an entire division. Critics might say that some managers are simply too busy to strategically choose high-leverage activities. But Grove would counter that precisely because a manager's work is never done, they must be ruthlessly selective. The constant influx of tasks can easily distract from what truly matters. It's about consciously shifting your focus. The wisdom here is profound, recognizing that every manager, regardless of their position, acts like a micro-CEO. Grove encourages this mindset, stating, as a micro-CEO, you can improve your own and your group's performance and productivity, whether or not the rest of the company follow suit. This means taking ownership of your sphere of influence and actively seeking opportunities to apply high-leverage activities. The bottom line, a manager's output is not simply their own activity, but the sum of their team's output, magnified or diminished by the leverage of their actions. Understanding this allows you to strategically prioritize activities that create the greatest positive impact, transforming how your organization performs.
2. Seeing the future of your output. To truly master management, you need to lift the lid on your operations. Andrew Grove introduced a powerful concept, the black box. Inside this box, inputs like raw materials and labor go in, and desirable outputs emerge. Think of a software company. Raw specifications and coding effort go in, and a finished compiler comes out. A college admissions office. Applications and staff hours go in, and hopefully matriculated students come out. The output of a manager is the output of the organizational units under his supervision or influence. This isn't just about manufacturing widgets, it's about any productive work, including the seemingly intangible. But how do you know what's happening within that black box? You need to cut windows into it. These are your indicators. They are measurements that reveal the health and progress of your operation. Many managers focus on activity indicators, how many calls a salesperson makes, but activity alone doesn't tell you if they're effective or if they're generating revenue. Therefore, Grove emphasizes that effective indicators must measure output. For instance, don't just track the number of calls, track the number of orders received. Don't count lines of code, count working software modules. Here's the catch. A single indicator can be misleading. Imagine measuring only the number of square feet cleaned by a Prestodio group, quantity. You might think you're doing great, but it gets worse. If you don't also measure the quality of cleaning, say by manager assessment or customer feedback, you could be driving down morale and overall satisfaction. Therefore, the wisdom lies in using paired indicators. For instance, track vouchers processed, quantity, alongside errors found by auditing, quality. This balanced view prevents overcorrection. Now imagine waking up tomorrow and knowing exactly where problems are brewing before they explode. This is the power of leading indicators. Unlike lagging indicators, which tell you what has happened, leading indicators predict what will happen. Take college recruiting. If your hiring target for June is a straight line, but by April your actual progress of accepted offers is lagging significantly, that's a leading indicator. It's an early warning, showing you're likely to miss your target. Critics might say, this is just predicting the obvious, or worse, creating self-fulfilling prophecies of failure. But a credible leading indicator, even if it shows a problem, empowers you. Therefore, you have time to take corrective action, perhaps intensify recruiting efforts or adjust your targets. Grove also advocates the stagger chart for forecasting, especially for economic trends. This isn't just a simple trend line, it's a series of forecasts made over time. You plot your current forecast, and then the next month, you plot the new forecast against the old one. This visually highlights how your outlook is changing, giving you a dynamic sense of future business trends. It makes the forecaster more accountable, knowing their predictions will be constantly compared to reality and previous predictions. The bottom line: to control your destiny, whether it's making breakfast, recruiting talent, or managing a complex organization, you must move beyond just observing activity. What is important is the thinking you force yourself to go through to understand the relationship between the various aspects of your production process. Develop clear, paired, and leading indicators. They are your eyes inside the black box, allowing you to anticipate, adapt, and drive towards high output.
Process versus mission. Many people shudder at the word meeting, seeing it as a black hole sucking away precious work hours. But Andy Grove offers a radical reframe. Meetings aren't the enemy. They are, in fact, the medium through which most managerial work gets done. You can't escape them, so the goal isn't elimination, but optimization. Grove distinguishes between two fundamental types of meetings. First, there are process-oriented meetings. These are your routine, regularly scheduled gatherings. Think one-on-ones with your direct reports, weekly staff syncs, or quarterly operations reviews. Their primary purpose is information exchange and mutual teaching, building a shared understanding across the team. Here's the catch. If you run these meetings haphazardly, they will feel like a waste. But it gets worse. Neglecting them starves your team of vital information, leading to misalignments and rework. Therefore, Grove insists on infusing these process meetings with rigorous regularity and clear structure. Agendas should be predictable, discussions focused, and notes taken to capture commitments and open issues. Imagine a well-run daily stand-up at a top tech company like Google or Apple. It's a process meeting designed for maximum information flow and minimal friction. Then there are mission-oriented meetings. These are ad hoc, convened with a very specific, singular purpose: to make a decision. Unlike their process-oriented cousins, they aren't about regular updates. They're about moving the needle. You might be thinking, but aren't all meetings supposed to lead to decisions? Grove would argue that if you're consistently holding ad hoc meetings to make decisions that should have been addressed in your regular process, you have a systemic problem. The key to a successful mission-oriented meeting lies squarely with the chairman. They must define the objective with crystal clarity before anyone steps into the room. Who needs to be there? What inputs are required? What decision absolutely must be made? Grove reminds us that high managerial productivity, I argue, depends largely on choosing to perform tasks that possess high leverage. A well-orchestrated decision-making meeting, even if infrequent, is high-leverage activity. Critics might say this sounds overly rigid, stripping away spontaneity. But Grove would counter that without this discipline, chaos reigns. Consider the cost. A 2-hour meeting with 10 managers can easily cost a company thousands of dollars. Therefore, a chairman must act as a strict timekeeper and facilitator, ensuring the discussion stays on track and culminates in a clear, actionable decision with full commitment from participants, even if there isn't universal agreement. Minutes aren't just a record, they're the concrete output, detailing what was decided, who was responsible, and by when. The bottom line: the output of a manager is the output of the organizational units under his supervision or influence. And for that output to be consistently high, meetings must evolve from dreaded obligations into disciplined, productive mediums.
Power, knowledge, and consensus. Decision-making is at the heart of management. It's what separates effective leaders from those who merely react. Andy Grove, in High Output Management, lays out an ideal model for effective decision-making, structured in 3 critical stages: free discussion, a clear decision, and full support. But this process isn't always straightforward. In today's rapidly evolving business landscape, particularly in knowledge-intensive industries like tech, a significant divergence can emerge between knowledge power, who knows the most, and position power, who has the authority to decide. Grove highlights how a young technical graduate might possess the most current, relevant information, yet a veteran manager holds the ultimate decision-making authority. If Intel, for instance, were to rely solely on old-fashioned position power for all its critical decisions, it would quickly find itself outmaneuvered by competitors. The challenge, then, is to ensure that the most informed voices are heard and valued, not stifled by hierarchy. You might be thinking, isn't it the manager's job to know everything? The reality is, no single manager can keep up with every technical nuance, especially in high tech. Therefore, the decision-making mechanism must seamlessly integrate both knowledge and position power. Here's the catch: even with a clear understanding of power dynamics, effective decision-making can be paralyzed by what Grove calls the peer group syndrome. This is where individuals, fearing judgment or rejection, hold back their true opinions, waiting for a consensus to emerge or for a senior person to dictate the path. Imagine a high-stakes board meeting at Apple discussing a new product direction. If everyone is waiting for Tim Cook to speak first, valuable, innovative ideas from those closest to the technology might never see the light of day. This reluctance to stick one's neck out leads to diluted discussions and suboptimal choices. Critics might argue that enforcing open discussion can lead to endless debates, but Grove pushes back. Genuine free discussion, where all points of view and aspects of an issue are openly welcomed and debated, is foundational. Once the free discussion has thoroughly aired all perspectives, the next stage is reaching a clear decision. Grove stresses that vagueness intended to avoid argument only postpones it and frustrates everyone. A clear decision, even a controversial one, is always better than ambiguity. But it gets worse. A decision, however clear, is useless without full support. This doesn't necessarily mean universal agreement. As Grove puts it, many people have trouble supporting a decision with which they do not agree, but that they need to do so is simply inevitable. The commitment to back the decision, even if you initially disagreed, is paramount for organizational cohesion and execution. So, what's the manager's role in all this? It's to orchestrate these stages, ensuring all relevant information is brought to bear, fostering an environment where diverse opinions can be expressed without fear, and then, if consensus isn't reached, making a clear, firm decision that everyone commits to. This is where managerial leverage truly comes into play. By setting up a robust decision-making process, a manager can amplify the impact of their team's collective intelligence. Remember the earlier idea? The output of a manager is the output of the organizational units under his supervision or influence. This principle underpins the need for a manager to drive effective decision-making within their teams, as it directly impacts their collective output. The bottom line: the art of management and decision-making isn't about always being right, but about creating a process where, as Grove notes, what is important is the thinking you force yourself to go through to understand the relationship between the various aspects of your production process.
5. Strategy, tactics, and MBO. Most people think planning is one of the loftier responsibilities of management, something grand that only senior executives do once a quarter or annually. But Grove challenges this perception. Planning, in his view, isn't a rare ceremonial event. It's a fundamental, everyday managerial activity, a continuous thought process.
Many think planning is a big, infrequent event, but this leads to reactive management, always playing catch-up. Therefore, we need a continuous, systematic approach to steering our organizations. As Grove puts it, what is important is the thinking you force yourself to go through to understand the relationship between the various aspects of your production process. He breaks down the planning process into 3 essential steps. The first is to establish projected need or demand. What does your environment, your customers, vendors, competitors, and internal collaborators demand from you and your team both now and in the future? Think of a software development team. Their environment demands specific features, bug fixes, and performance improvements from users, sales, and product management. What do these groups expect in a year? Next, you establish your present status. What are you producing right now? What are your current capabilities, your projects in the pipeline, and what will their output be if you continue as is? This isn't just about what's completed, it's also about work in progress. Imagine your team's output a year from now if you change nothing. This step provides a grounded baseline. Here's the catch. True insight comes from the third step. Compare and reconcile the demand with your present status. What's the gap? And what more or less do you need to do to meet that future demand? This critical step defines your strategy, the overall plan of action to close that gap. For example, if Apple identifies a future market demand for a new category of wearable tech, environmental demand, and sees its current R&D pipeline is insufficient, present status, its strategy would be to launch a new initiative to develop that technology. The tactics, then, are the specific actions taken to implement that strategy. If the strategy is to develop a new wearable device, the tactics would involve specific engineering tasks, component sourcing, design iterations, and testing protocols. Grove emphasizes that a strategy at one level often becomes the tactics for the next lower level. Imagine Apple's overall strategy to enter a new market, translating into the marketing department's strategy to position the product, which then becomes the tactical tasks for the regional marketing teams. Critics might say separating strategy and tactics creates a disconnect, but it actually provides clarity. Without defining what you need to do, strategy first, you can easily get lost in how to do things, tactics, without a clear purpose. Therefore, aligning these levels is crucial for effective execution. This brings us to a powerful tool for effective planning and execution, management by objectives, or MBO. The core idea of MBO is simple. If you don't know where you're going, any road will take you there. You need to answer 2 key questions. First, where do I want to go? This sets your objective. Second, how will I pace myself to see if I am getting there? These are your key results, the milestones. Consider Netflix's objective to expand its streaming service globally. Their objective is clear. Key results might include launching in X new countries by Q3, acquiring Y million new subscribers in those regions, and securing Z amount of local content. MBO is not about dictating every step. Instead, it's about providing clear, short-range objectives with specific, measurable key results. This provides task-relevant feedback, allowing you to make real-time adjustments. But it gets worse. Many organizations fall into the trap of having too many objectives, thinking more goals mean more achievement. Therefore, Grove insists on keeping the number of objectives small and highly selective, ensuring genuine focus. As Grove puts it, the output of a manager is the output of the organizational units under his supervision or influence. MBO ensures that a manager's efforts, through their team, are directed towards clear, impactful outcomes. Effective planning, then, is a continuous loop of understanding your environment, assessing your capabilities, defining your path, and setting clear, measurable goals. It's about proactively shaping the future, not just reacting to it. The bottom line, what is important is the thinking you force yourself to go through to understand the relationship between the various aspects of your production process.
6. The coach's role. Welcome back to Audiobook Bites, where we distill the timeless wisdom of classic business literature. Today, we're diving into another crucial chapter from Andy Grove's High Output Management, Motivation, Training, and Task-Relevant Maturity, the coach's role. Managers are ultimately responsible for delivering results, but as Grove famously states, the output of a manager is the output of the organizational units under his supervision or influence. So the real question becomes, how do we ignite that spark in every individual to achieve their personal best? Grove starts by bringing Abraham Maslow's hierarchy of needs into the workplace. Think about it. At the base, we have physiological needs, fair compensation and basic benefits, ensuring our teams can cover life's necessities. Beyond that, security needs are met by a stable work environment, clear expectations, and protection against arbitrary decisions. But what truly fuels high performance in professional settings, it's the higher order needs. Social needs are satisfied through team cohesion and a sense of belonging, while esteem and recognition drive individuals to achieve and gain respect. The pinnacle, of course, is self-actualization, the drive to fulfill one's maximum potential, to continually get better, not just for external rewards, but for the sheer joy of mastery. Now, here's the kicker. How do we create an environment where these higher-order needs can flourish? Grove introduces the powerful sports analogy. He asks, what makes an athlete push themselves to their absolute limit, even when there's no immediate financial gain? It's the challenge, the competition, the desire to beat their own best or outpace rivals. We can inject this spirit into the workplace. Imagine Intel's facilities maintenance group. For years, their performance was mediocre. But then a Building Czar program was introduced, scoring each building's upkeep and publicly comparing the results. Suddenly, performance skyrocketed. There was no extra pay, no new bonuses, just a clear racetrack and the thrill of competition. Conversely, Grove recounted a journalist whose column thrived on beating rival papers. When the papers merged, that competitive spark vanished, and so did much of his motivation. But it gets worse. Motivation alone isn't enough. We also need to consider individual capability. A manager has two primary levers for improving performance: training and motivation. But the application of these levers isn't one size fits all. Grove champions the concept of task-relevant maturity, or TRM. This isn't about a person's general age or experience, but their specific readiness and skill level for a particular task. A seasoned sales manager moved into factory operations, for example, might have low TRM in that new domain, despite high overall competence. This is where your management style must adapt, much like a parent guiding a child. For individuals with low TRM on a task, a structured, directive approach is most effective. You tell them what to do, when to do it, and how. Think of a parent teaching a child to ride a bike: constant instruction and hands-on guidance. As TRM moves to medium, a communicating, supportive style is best. Here, you engage in two-way dialogue, offering emotional support and mutual reasoning. The manager acts as a partner, helping the subordinate work through problems. The parent removes the training wheels but stays close, offering encouragement and advice. Finally, for those with high TRM, a minimal involvement monitoring style is appropriate. Set clear objectives, then step back and track their progress. This is about trust and delegation. The parent trusts the teenager to drive to college, monitoring their progress from a distance. You might be thinking this sounds overly prescriptive or even not nice, but Grove asserts that effectiveness, not niceness, is the goal. We must overcome the cultural prejudice that makes us shy away from direct instruction when needed. Therefore, a good manager is flexible, switching styles as the subordinate's TRM for a given task evolves. Critics might argue this approach strips managers of their unique leadership style, forcing a rigid mold. But the reality is that true leadership lies in adaptability, in knowing precisely what support their team needs when they need it, and providing it in the most effective way. The bottom line: effective management isn't about a single style or a fixed hierarchy. It's about understanding individual motivation, harnessing the power of competition, and dynamically adjusting your approach to match your team's task-relevant maturity, all with the ultimate goal of eliciting peak performance and maximizing the output of your organization.
7. Continuous improvement and who it's not for. Our journey through Andy Grove's wisdom unveils management as an infinite game, a ceaseless cycle of observation and adaptation. We've covered production fundamentals, managerial leverage, effective meetings, sound decision-making, and future planning. Here's the thing. Navigating complexity means applying hybrid structures and dual reporting, balancing market, contractual, and cultural controls for optimal influence. The high-output manager is a relentless learner, continuously refining their approach for peak team performance. Critics might say Grove's systematic approach stifles spontaneous genius, but, therefore, his method cultivates adaptive intelligence, not rigid dogma. Therefore, it empowers true, resilient leadership. This approach centers on the profound truth. The output of a manager is the output of the organizational units under his supervision or influence. This book is not for those seeking easy answers, inflexible leaders, or those prioritizing individual glory over team output and continuous data-driven improvement. Future pacing. Imagine your Intel-like operations consistently evolving, driven by profound understanding, not just reaction. The bottom line. 7. Continuous improvement and who it's not for. Our journey through Andy Grove's wisdom unveils management as an infinite game, a ceaseless cycle of observation and adaptation. We've covered production fundamentals, managerial leverage, effective meetings, sound decision-making, and future planning. Here's the thing. Navigating complexity means applying hybrid structures and dual reporting, balancing market, contractual, and cultural controls for optimal influence. The high output manager is a relentless learner, continuously refining their approach for peak team performance. Critics might say Grove's systematic approach stifles spontaneous genius, but, therefore, his method cultivates adaptive intelligence, not rigid dogma. Therefore, it empowers true, resilient leadership. This approach centers on the profound truth. The output of a manager is the output of the organizational units under his supervision or influence. This book is not for those seeking easy answers, inflexible leaders, or those prioritizing individual glory over team output and continuous data-driven improvement. Future pacing. Imagine your Intel-like operations consistently evolving, driven by profound understanding, not just reaction. The bottom line, what is important is the thinking you force yourself to go through to understand the relationship between the various aspects of your production process. It's a lifelong commitment.